viewers, my name is Chini Ilirin Solis from BSED English, and I'll be discussing to you about Curriculum Localization Part 2. But before you watch this video, kindly watch the first part, Curriculum Localization Part 1, which you can find by clicking the link in the description box below. Before we move over to our topic, let me introduce to you the subtopics we'll be discussing for today's discussion. So we have here, first, localization and curriculum localization. Second, examples used in lessons start with those in the locality. Third, value of the local learning system. Fourth, reminders on localization. And lastly, principles of localization. Those are the topics that will be covered for today's discussion. Now, lend me your ears and eyes on the screen, for we will go further about localization in curriculum. But before that, let us first know the objectives. So at the end of the lesson, students are expectedly first, understand and remember the use of curriculum localization in teaching method. Second, apply the localizing method to the content of the lesson. And third, value of the importance of localizing the curriculum to the learning process of the students. The relevance of curriculum is a crucial dimension of quality education. The promotion of localized curricula is a way of encouraging such relevance in very different local, cultural, and economic contexts. It is an important component of the decentralization of education, governance, and management. Now let's find out what is localization. Localization is a freedom for schools or local authorities to adapt the curriculum to local conditions and relating the context of the curriculum and the process of teaching and learning to the local environment, according to Taylor 2004. The flexibility in adapting the program of education for students to local condition, often away from the capital city and urban population centers, is a direct response to traditional curriculum, which Taylor has described as too full, rigid, inflexible, and irrelevant to lives of learners. The process of defining parts or components of the curriculum at community or local or school level, normally with the involvement of local staff, stakeholders, and institutions, so as to address issues that are locally relevant and allow for more meaningful learning experiences. Now let's move on to the definition of curriculum localization. What is curriculum localization? So it refers to the process of relating learning content specified in the curriculum to the local information and materials in the learner's community. The localization of the curriculum can allow learning to become more meaningful and relevant. It supports policy formulation and standard setting for reform of the curriculum and the impact of this on teacher skills and knowledge. Localization will involve the use of local materials both as the subject and the object of instruction. Localization will also involve making the local culture an integral part of the curriculum. Let's move over to the examples used in lesson start with those in the locality. So first, names, situation, setting needed to give context to test questions or problem-solving exercises are those of immediate community. So, this is the part where you will use names, places, or even events to relate to the specific community's questions or problem solving exercises. Second, local materials are used as often as possible on making instructional materials. So, for example, a teacher will look for available instructional materials in the surrounding area or that students can see it every day. Third, local stories are used in the language learning areas. So, like for example, using localized stories like ang alamat ng lansones, or even other legend that are originated in one's own country or even in the own community. And lastly, translating a story in another language to the language of one's learners for use in MTB and MLE. So, this is where the teacher will translate the story into a mother tongue base. If a story is written in English, the teacher will translate it into Filipino or another language that the students can understand. Now, how can we achieve curriculum localization? Philippines is a home of 100 ethno-linguistic groups, each with distinctive way of life, beliefs, customs, and traditions. Basic education need to be culturally responsive to the diversities while at the same time meeting the standards set by the national curriculum. Here, we will discuss the pedagogy in teaching localized curriculum. The value of the local learning system. Understanding the local learning system and how it can be tapped to making learning of the national more successful will, first, promote increased learning. Second, develop in the learners an appreciation and pride of his or her community's culture and identity. Third, develop in the learners serious commitment to help develop their strong identification with the community. And lastly, community development can be enhanced through a culturally responsive curriculum. Now let's move on to the reminders on localization. According to Bringas, he gives important reminders on contextualization and localization. First, localization and contextualization can be done in all areas. Second, localization maximizes the use of available materials. Third, to contextualize, teacher must use authentic materials and anchor teaching on the context of learner's life. Fourth, teachers should encourage students to pose problems and issues and use strategies to address these. And lastly, the localized and contextualized curriculum is based on local needs and relevance for the learners, thus allowing for its flexibility and creativity in the lessons. Overall, teachers can contextualize and localize teaching materials in different learning areas. In general, the use of contextualized and localized materials is effective in classroom instruction. The problems met by the teachers in the contextualization of teaching materials in classroom instruction are the lack of fund resources, lack of time and availability of materials, lack of support from the community, cultural diversity, geography, and unfamiliar of the place, lack of support from the school head, and lack of support from co-workers. A plan of action is proposed to enhance the contextualization and localization of teaching materials in the classroom instruction. Now let's move on to the principles of localization. As you can see in the diagram, the box was categorized into traditional teaching, inquiry teaching, and compatible strategies. So when we say traditional teaching, it means the expectation that students will learn because we will tell them to. Then, Teaching and learning based on the inquiry method is an approach that helps students build their knowledge and understanding through research and exploration activities based on existing knowledge. And compatible strategies means those are the things that the teacher needs to do in order to achieve the successful learning process of the students. Now let's go through the first principle. So in traditional teaching, elders, family, community, and peers teach. So they can be the teachers of students or learners. So inquiry teaching, teacher as facilitator of learning, science as social endeavor. They will use the student-centered method where they will teach the students in independent learning. The compatible strategy is community involvement, cooperative groups, peer tutoring, multiple teachers as facilitator for learning. In short, students are taught various of people within the community for them to expand their perspectives. Next is learning connected to life seasons and environment. So, lessons or topic are always relating to the real life situation. So what is the inquiry teaching? So it is to investigate fundamental science questions of interest to students. So, teachers must ask relatable questions to gain the interest of the students. So the compatible strategy is to investigate fundamental science, questions related to life seasons and environment, investigate questions from multiple perspectives, discipline. Next is learn by watching, listening, and doing. Elder is expert. So the inquiry teaching is active and extend inquiry over time. Use of print and electronic sources to help interpret or revise explanation. The compatible strategy is to learn by active extended inquiry. Use multiple sources of expert knowledge, including cultural expert. Next, knowledge shared through modeling, storytelling, and innovation. The inquiry teaching is classroom communication and debate of understanding. And the compatible strategy is diverse representation and communication of students, idea, and work to classmates and community. So overall, this helps teachers and students comprehend concept by relating and presenting a lesson in the context of prevailing local environment, culture, and resources. Hence, lessons are becoming more real-life, customized, and appropriate. So before I end this discussion, let me leave you a quote. The purpose of education is to replace the empty mind into an open mind. Thank you so much for lending your time listening to my video discussion. I hope you have learned something for today's discussion. And once again, I am Chidi Solis, now signing off. Thank you and God bless us all.